Boy, I always have that problem of messing people's name up, but it's GoDaddy. So we thank you for being a part of the Fresh Anointing Show, Marilyn. And so your company is Behavior Treatment and Consulting Services, and your motto is "We help you connect the dots." Tell us a little bit about that. What do you mean when you say we help you connect the dots?
Well, thank you for having me. What we know is that our lives are very complex, and there's no straight line, there's no all black, all white, and sometimes we just need a little help. So, just like a puzzle, our company likes to help others connect the dots. We work providing individual and family counseling. Um, And we also work by helping businesses develop their bylaws, operating procedures, starting 501(c)(3)s. We just help you connect the dots in your life, however you want them to connect. We help you do that.
Oh, that's awesome. So you help other organizations kind of get it all together and make sure that they're operating in the correct manner legally and make sure all those things are in order.
We do. And again, we also serve in this area, we have a lot of military families. So we also work with the counseling aspect of that as well.
Now, do you actually have clients and you do counseling for child abuse?
Yes, we do. We have our clients are self-referred. Our clients come from military referrals. Our clients come from the Department of Social Services, juvenile justice. We get them from everywhere. Um, and the company has been around for a while. And again, we highlight the fact that we help other companies who are trying to get started and don't know how to do that. But the child abuse arena, we certainly want to highlight during the month of April because we recognize the month of April as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month.
Hmm.
And we work to educate, to empower, and to elevate. The three E's of what we're focusing on this month.
I like that. I like that very much.
Okay.
Um, so tell us, what is this initiative all about? So we recognize this as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. What does that all involve? What it's all about?
Well, we like to think that most of us want the best for our children. And when we talk about children in this arena, we're talking about those that are under the age of 18. And it's important, very critically important, to shine light on the fact that there are children who are willfully and intentionally harmed.
Hmm.
It's important to shine light on the fact that there are children who are physically, children who are sexually, children who are emotionally abused. And what we know now in 2021 is that we are seeing children who are abused because of their skin color.
Hmm.
We're seeing children who are abused because of their ethnicity, their race. And we focus on, how we got here. But this is an old initiative. It's been around for a long time. What's changed is that the players, some of the players have gone away, but we have new players in here. We have more children, new children, more perpetrators, more abusers.
Hmm.
So to continuously, um, I call myself the conversationalist because I like to start conversations. I don't like to end them. I like to start so that they can continue. And we have to continue these types of conversations. Again, we have to educate, we have to empower, we have to elevate.
Now, Here's a biggie for you right here. How do we engage or get our churches and communities involved with this initiative?
Um, let's look at some human behavior. It's easy to get frustrated. Let's look at our culture. Many of us, and I speak for myself, and that way I don't break anybody's confidentiality. I grew up during a cultural time when my parents didn't use timeout. And a lot of us did. You're laughing, so you might be one of those too.
I understand. I do. I do. I know about it. No timeout. Didn't even know what timeout was back then.
Exactly. Grew up during a time when we were told, go get the switch. We went and got the weapon.
That's right.
Hurt, you know. And it had to be the right size, the right length. Couldn't come back with no little twig.
Yes, you had to go back and get a new one.
Yes, grew up during the time when we heard them say, "Oh, this gonna hurt me more than it hurts you." Really? I'm hurting. I've got tears. It's easy to engage in a power struggle. Power struggles don't just happen between adults and children; they also happen between adults and adults. So, oftentimes we model what was done to us. As I said, due to my age, I'm dating myself. I grew up doing that. And so it's culturally important to recognize how families were socialized and are still being socialized. I remember when my children were little, being a therapist, I was going to do it right. Oh, you're going to timeout. My husband was like, they're going to do what? No, 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 no. And I, was like, nah, no, go get Mr. Friendly. And my children they can talk about. We don't ever know what happened to Mr. Friendly. Some kind of way Mr. Friendly disappeared. But, we look at our culture and to ask your question about engagement, how we engage our churches and how we engage our communities are different. We're looking at an era now that I did not know about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even 20 something years ago, a pandemic,
right?
The economic crises, the social isolation that the children go through, that the adults have gone through, the differentials of power, sex trafficking, we're hearing a lot about now. So how do we engage? We have to start by dissecting where we are. We can't roll it all together. Because your model doesn't fit my model, doesn't fit what's going on in my household. There was a time when, and it is still being taught in many families, what goes on in my house stays in my house. So how do we engage? We engage by starting the conversations. And the conversations start wherever you want them to start. It's not where the textbook says it needs to start. But if economics are a big part of what's going on in my family right now, and it's causing a lot of stress right now, and it's causing a lot of frustration right now, then economics is where the conversation needs to start. How can we help? How can we educate? How can we empower you to handle your finances differently? How can we educate you about financial management, financial literacy? Start the conversations wherever the people need to start the conversations. And that's, we have to prevent, and we also have to report. But you have to know what you're preventing from what. If I'm hungry and you say, I'm going to pray for you, Beautiful, but I'm hungry. Where is the food?
Mm-hmm,
Give me
mm-hmm.
some food. So when it comes to uh, prevention, what are you talking about? Well, we're talking about all of those things. We're talking about intentionally and willfully hurting a child.
You know, you said something earlier, and I want to come back to this, what we're talking about now, getting churches and communities involved. But I want to ask a question because you grew up in an era, and I grew up in an era, as we have said, there was no time out. There was no go stand in the corner or none of that. Even in school, when we went to school, there was none of that because when I went to school, the teachers had a paddle, and especially those phys ed teachers, they had a paddle as well. And if you did something wrong, they used a paddle. Now, or like you say, at home, there was a belt or there was a switch. But is it no longer culturally acceptable for parents to decide how best to discipline or punish their child?
It is acceptable, and parents should take the lead on that role. But remember, when bones are broken,
Mm,
when bruising occurs, when there's no lesson to be taught or learned, that's abusive.
mm,
What lesson are you teaching? Um, you got to be able to get something out of it. Um, Positive reinforcements, taking privileges away, um, ignoring malbehavior, um, finding some positive in something that has already occurred. So yes, parents, guardians, grandparents, adults need to take the lead, but not if that lead causes physical or emotional harm. That's not teaching. That's not reinforcing positivity. That's causing hurt and harm.
now, you bring up such a good point, and I think it's worth dialoguing about because what I hear you saying is that we need to investigate as a parent why that child has done what they did or what's the motive behind it, not just lash out, and certainly not disciplining a child when you are angry and upset, and then talk about that. What can we learn? What's the teachable moment here? And I heard something. I was in a workshop, and it made so much sense. One group, and I'm not going to label. I just want to use the terminology.
Yes.
One group would see their child standing in a chair, looking out the window, and they would say to that child, "It's not good for you to stand in your chair, Sally. You need to get down because you might hurt yourself." Once that dialogue takes place, then the follow up is, "Why were you standing in the chair looking out of the window?" "Oh, mommy, I was looking at this bird." "Oh, what color bird is it?" "Well, it was a red bird." And so the parent begins to explain what that bird meant. Now, take the other group, would see their child standing in the chair looking out of the window, and they would yell at them, "Get out of that chair before you fall and hurt yourself, or else I'm going to so and so and so." What's the difference there?
You're talked about, hit on actually, you're talking about modeling.
Mm,
One set of parents are modeling what they have seen, what was done to them, asking questions. Now, remember, depending on the culture, depending on the age,
mm-hmm.
asking questions can be seen as talking back. We were told you don't do. So I think that while neither one of those scenarios are incorrect, again, it's the modeling. Sometimes as parents, we have to take a time out. It's real easy to see you want to save that child in both of those scenarios. The goal is safety. You don't want the child to fall out of the chair. You don't want the child to get hurt. So the goal is the same, but how we get there, what was modeled in this household, either one of those scenarios, was there any physical harm caused by what the parents said? Was there any emotional harm really said? Was there a lesson to be learned? I think the lesson was clear in both of those scenarios. We don't want you hurt. And we have to heighten the awareness. We have to heighten the awareness. Behavior learned can be unlearned. I learned not to use the word that my parents used. Girl, you gonna get a beating. If you say beaten today, people obviously think abuse.
Right.
So I learned to say, you're gonna get a tap tap. You're gonna get a spanking. And again, my husband's eyes went way out to here. Different backgrounds and age differences too. But I say that to say behavior learned, like a smoker. You learn to smoke, you may unlearn to smoke. It is a process. It doesn't just happen. You start the conversation, and conversations don't just end, they continue. Sometimes as parents, again, we have to not just send the children a timeout, we have to take a timeout.
Right, exactly.
It's like when we work with couples, we teach fair fighting rules. We have to have some fair fighting rules, fair parenting rules, with children. Parents have to sometimes say, I need to take a time out before something comes out of my mouth that may be hurtful. And I hope that's answering your question.
No, you hit on some good points. I like the part about modeling. It's important because it reminds me of the story of the daughter that had grown up in the kitchen cooking for her family, and she would cut the end off of the ham before she put it in the oven to bake. And she did that every time she baked a ham. And one of her children asked, Mom, why do you always cut the end off the ham before you put it in the oven to bake? She said, well, I did it because that's what my mom did. So she said, I'm going to ask my mom why she did that. So she asked her mom, she said, Mom, why did you always cut the end off the ham before putting it in the oven to bake it? And her mother responded to her and said, well, back then the stoves were very small and the pots were not large enough to hold the pan. So I had to cut the end off so the ham would be able to fit in the pot to put it in the oven so it would bake. So what you see is learned behavior. Sometimes we don't even understand why we're doing what we're doing. We just do it because that's what mama did. That's what daddy did. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I want to take this a bit further because the daughter, she didn't need to cut the end off the ham because pots were made bigger. The stoves were able to compensate. Right. But she did it because that's what she saw. Now, when you talk about abuse, you see not just child abuse, but abuse for adults as well. If a son grows up and sees his father hitting, verbally abusing, and physically abusing his mom, guess what? That son, he grows up thinking that that's what's supposed to happen when things doesn't go his way.
That's right.
So the question is, how do we turn this around? How do we recognize and respond to child abuse? Is there training here in North Carolina to help people that are there? As you said, behavior has been learned, but behavior can be unlearned.
Yes, many communities have what we call a child advocacy council or center. You may start there. Many churches have mommy and me programs.
Okay.
You may start there. Many schools still have parent teacher associations. Get involved. Start the conversations. April is Child Abuse Awareness Month. We're wearing the color blue. I'm not wearing it today, but we're wearing the color blue as much as possible. We have blue ribbons that our churches are giving out as people come in or as you pass people on the street. Start the conversation. Blue ribbon, what is this for? Oh, this is just a symbol, just to remember that we would like for you to be aware that child abuse is real, it's happening. If you see it, if you suspect it, prevent it by reporting it. And let the trained professionals get involved and do the investigations. Protect the life of that child. Call the local Department of Social Services. Ask them about training programs. When it comes to the communities and the churches, you would be surprised how many resources are right there in the house, as we said. There are people who are trained counselors, people who have experiences with those organizations that would be more than willing, if they're asked, to do a survey. Who's in your house? Who's in your community that has access to those resources, who knows about those resources, so that you can get the wheels moving. Sometimes you go into community, you see all these pinwheels around. You know, the people, well, what is that for? You know, how do I get involved with that? It takes action. It takes action. It's one thing to hear all this wonderful information, but if you don't do anything with it, continue the conversation. Then you look, girl, you know, I heard this podcast today, or did you know this was on Facebook? And they were talking about child abuse. It's not gone away. It is still here. Child abuse is old. It's been around longer than we've been around. I think about how children many years ago would work in the fields. Today, people may consider that abusive, but that was a way of life during that time. Culturally, we shift. Culturally, we move. But for communities to work together, not in silos. Churches join with other organizations, or the organizations join with churches. Work together, continue the conversation.
Yeah. That's great. I like what you said. You have to begin the conversation. You have to take action. And that is so true. And that's about everything. We have to learn how to take action. As we get ready to close out, would you please tell the listeners where you can be located and your contact information?
Certainly, we'll be glad to. Again, we are the Behavioral Treatment and Consulting Services located in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We primarily provide individual and family counseling to women, family, and children. And we also assist businesses and organizations in establishing 301c3s, 501c3 organizations, and developing bylaws. Our contact number is 910-723-3583, Post Office Box 53293, Fayetteville, North Carolina 28305. And again, my name is Marilyn Godette, and I would welcome to hear from anyone who has any questions about anything that we have discussed today, because we all have a part to play. And our company welcomes an opportunity to help you connect the dots and prevent child abuse.
Thank you so much, Marilyn, for being a part of the Fresh Anointing Show and sharing some valuable information that we need. And we thank you for being a part of the Fresh Anointing Show and listening and to what has been said. If you can, if you will, please share this information with your family and your friends, those that you know that are in need of it, that may be going through abuse or child abuse. Share it with them or yourself if you need it. Please reach out to Marilyn Godette from the Behavior Treatment and Consulting Services. She will be happy, her and her staff, to advise you and to take care of you and to help you along the way. Also, I would ask that you would do a watch party with this if you are viewing this on Facebook Live, or if you're listening to the podcast, you can listen to this podcast or share this podcast by going to the freshanointingshow.com, clicking on podcast on demand, and you can listen to the podcast there as well. Or the podcast can be found on Amazon, Pandora, TuneIn app, as well as iTunes. So there are many different ways that you can listen to the podcast, or you can go to, again, the freshanointingshow.com and click on podcast on demand. Once again, thank you for joining us, and thank you, Marilyn, for being a part of the Fresh Anointing Show. Hope to get you back sometime soon in the near future.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Until next time, may the Lord bless you real good.